Sorry, the technical difficulty. So just everyone, could you please do containment for yourself and for where you're at and whatever tech devices you're using. And then I will do the best I can to fix the technical difficulties while we're waiting. Thank you so much.
So what do we have, some glitches going on there?
Yes, yes.
All right, I'm just going to do containment, general containment. Make sure the lines are clear.
All right.
All right. Miss A, Keisha said it knocked her out.
Oh, yes. Okay. Just if she can keep trying to join, there should be a green button that says join call. So that should work. Okay. Thank you. It's working because our video is back and the recording button has decided to work. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, the whole idea of the containment is to block out whatever disturbance may try to interfere with the forum. So you're containing yourselves, containing your tech, and containing the room in which you're sitting. So if everyone's there, I'll start again. Welcome to everyone for joining the fourth AsktheChief Forum, the West Coast version this time. Welcome to you from West Coast, good evening, and welcome to you who are tuning in from Asia, good morning. So, one of the things I wanted to announce to those who are new that the Neo Shamanic Temple of Higher Awareness is an actual recognized religion by the United States government. We have been issued a EIN, so you can actually write the donations off to the extent of the law. So it depends on, I guess, whatever country, or not country, excuse me, whatever state you're in, as to how much it's allowed. So anyway, we're going to, actually to start out, get the ball rolling. Anyone having any questions? But actually, before you do, you're going to have to speak up and then tell us your name, because the way that we had to set up the camera, we can't really see who's on screen. So the screen's facing the other way. We have it facing the usual direction. The sign in the background shows up reverse for some reason. So, if anyone has any questions right offhand, you can go ahead and tell me your name and ask me the question.
I have a question.
Okay.
It's Neil.
Oh, Neil.
From the list. So, and I don't know if this question has been addressed in earlier forums. So if it has, and if it's boring people, sorry, I apologize. But I wanted to ask specifically about Jesus Christ. And I know that most people on this forum probably are at a point where they know, how do we say this nicely? It's not real. But my question is around, I have a friend who is Christian and very much so, and her mother is a pastor, and they have these prayer sessions together, and they do what they call going into the throne room. And she was describing it to me, and the way she described it and the energy that was there and the things that happened that she experienced and her mother experienced, I was curious how they get to these states, or what is happening in those situations when they are praying to Jesus Christ and having these experiences. Basically, what is that? Is that the program having them have these experiences, or what is that when they're praying to something and they're having these experiences, but this thing we know, have established is not real? What is that?
Well, one, it starts out with actually understanding what this is, what this realm is, where we are, and how things are set up here. know that I've talked to a number of you on this subject matter, and I've observed Christianity, as a number of you know. My family was involved in it, and my parents decided, for some reason, probably proper reason, to not raise myself and my other siblings in religion. So I had a pastor, stepfather, a deacon, not stepfather, but step-grandfather, a deacon grandfather, and a lot of the family still steeped in this. Because they couldn't really beat me in a debate, they left me alone when it came to trying to get me to join the religion. And I even did try at one point. I just found it to not be just really real. And that was when I was in my early 20s, when I joined the church and went through the process of supposedly getting saved. To tell you the truth, I think that as far as like you talking about people getting to the state, I think of what's it, the spirit, getting the spirit.
Yes.
Ms. A has some experiences with that because she was raised in a Christian cult, and I think that I think I would like her to share that, and then I'm going to add on to it once she does her intro with her story. Because it's easier then, because I have my answers, but if no one's ready for this, I haven't been sort of walked into my view of what's real and what isn't. When Christianity really, most Christians don't even know where its origins are, where it comes from.
Mm.
And also, I know for a fact, just from all the Christians in my family, that most people have never read the Bible all the way through either. So I'm just going to have Ms. A start out. Excuse me, sorry, got some person to do. Someone got something coming up. Yeah. I'm going to contain while you're doing this.
No problem. Thank you very much. So for 22, 23 years, I was in a church cult, and I was born into it, so I'm very familiar with Bible, Jesus, and all those things. So every type of system means they draw you in, you give your essence and your energy to it, and they feed off of you. So churches, schools, hospitals, there's all kinds of different systems all over this planet. And every system has density that represents it, that supports it, that backs it, almost like their own little mafia. Each little group has their supporters that manifest things to those who are a part of its system. Their chicken coop, like Chief always talks about. So those who are, whatever the cult that I was a part of, they had their own group of chickens that they would feed, they would take the essence from, and then they would continue to grow and gather more and more with it, what Chief calls chickens, those who are allowing themselves to give their essence to something external instead of learning how to free your own energy, to free your own consciousness, so that you can protect your own energy, so that you're not constantly giving your essence away to something external.
So one of the things I was kind of curious as to whether you might want to share about healing sessions that they had and things of that sort, and some of the things that people experienced during those types of...
In Chief's book, My Neo Shamanic Journey on Amazon, he wrote about some of the experiences that I had when it came to the cult that I was in. So the way that the cult that I was in would draw people is that they would have a mass meeting of people, or they would invite people to see what they would call a miracle. And they would do all kinds of things where they would straighten spines, they would have someone's leg grow out. That's what happened to me. My bones began to tingle and my left leg grew longer. And there's people whose hands had grown out. There's people who have had different diseases and things that disappeared. And people would think, okay, that proves that person, that church is real. But it doesn't. It just, those who maintain their healings were only because they were a constant billboard to support this cult.
Which attracted more members, which attracted more food things that are actually over these types of systems.
And usually, like with chief sessions, after the session, after people sleep, after they rest, their energy increases. But when you go to a cult, when you go to a system, your energy decreases and decreases and decreases. And you can always see that as an evidence of what type of system it is.
Yeah.
Mm.
So what it's designed to do, like a lot of things, religion is literally just another one of a series of distractions on this planet. Again, it's an interesting one to start out with. Usually that comes up a little bit later in discussion, so it's kind of like driving a Mack truck right into the forum. So, because religion is really a touchy subject for a lot of people who've grown up in it. Sometimes it stayed in Christianity because of family. My grandma loved her deeply, Christian for as long as I can remember, and quite an interesting person. Her family, my great uncle as well, they had interesting things to say about the religion, even though they were in it. In some cases, because of their generation. My grandma, she died, or let's say transitioned over 10 years ago, and at the age of 99. So, she'd been around a good long time, and there was a certain time, and I've shared this with a few people, a few clients, where there were churches being burned in the States, the usual kind of nonsense. Black churches were being set aflame, and I think that was in the 80s or something. And her being married to, a reverend and then deacon, she said, you know what? They shouldn't be, burning churches. They should be burning preachers. Now, that was her idea, her attitude about literally just how, I should say, altruistic the church is. And she never really saw it as an altruistic thing. Complaints about finding a new pastor and thinking that this person's really real and genuine, and then finding that yet again, a pastor who starts to ask for a lot of money so they can build a bigger and bigger and bigger building, and to compete with the church down the way. So it just seemed like it was just kind of like this just crazy distraction. And her brother, he had some things to say about it. Actually, I think I'm going to refrain from some of the stuff he said about it.
Whenever I was in the church cult, I believed in Jesus because I was afraid of what would happen to me when I died. I was afraid of the unknown. I felt like I couldn't trust people, so maybe I could trust things on the other side. So, and I was desperate for someone to feel like someone cared about me. So when they would talk about Jesus loves you, I wanted to believe it. And when I met Chief and I met his daughter and I began to learn about 10 years ago, I realized that everything I believed in was based off fear. Based off the fact that I was afraid of facing that everything I learned wasn't real. And whenever I just screwed up the nerve to say, what if it isn't real? What, am I going to sit in a corner and cry? Or am I going to continue with my expression? Am I going to learn what Chief and his daughter had to share with me? And my energy was at a point where I constantly had to take naps. I could take a nap in 30 seconds or less, just because that's how much the density was draining me in that cult church. But then after I learned from Chief, I began to have enough energy where I don't have to take naps all the time. And I actually have a peace of mind. The noise in my head was so intense in the church. They were constantly expecting me to be this angel because I was a pastor's kid. And I was miserable. Then finally now I can understand more about myself, about some of the struggles that I've had, and all those kinds of things. Sorry.
Well, you also, you've shared with me over time that even kind of people, a lot of the types of people that were attending the church tend to, wasn't sure exactly what their intention was because their behavior seemed to be a lot worse than people who were supposedly, heretics and whatever.
Right.
The kind of like backstabbing, pettiness and gossiping and all of that. And when I was attending a church in Pittsburgh when I was in school, with my girlfriend, I found just the, the same type of thing that was going on, and also a lot of self-righteousness from certain individuals. They could behave badly because they had the support of Jesus Christ or something. They could, in other words, be not opinionated, but what is it?
Yeah, judge you on
Judgmental. I've never run into as much judging, as I've ever run into dealing with Christians. I've dealt with a lot of different people, a lot of different, religions. Some of them kind of judgy also, but the amount of it that I ran into, because I was around more Christians, I'll put it that way, than I was around Muslims, or here in Thailand we're around a lot of Buddhists. I was around Buddhists in the States too. Buddhism is an interesting, deal, but all these religions are basically tainted by the same thing. So it's literally, to me, it's just a box. It's just another box. So it's a box just like college boxes, company boxes, what company you work for, career boxes. Am I a doctor? Am I a lawyer? And all of these things actually have some taste of a religious energy to them also. It's like this group type of deal. And also, I think, Tennille, when we talked with, I think probably your first session, you were talking about so many religions, and they're all saying that they're the one true religion. And it's like, which is it?
Right.
So what I see is it's a distraction on purpose, compartmentalizing. That's one of the things that is very, very big in this world. And if you want to see how it's represented, the other side, when I talk about the system, which I talk about the other side, which goes into something that would be considered etheric, where most people are locked into this tunnel vision of what you see and what you've been told is the only reality there is, and don't think. So if the mind goes off into another place, where mine did when I was a kid, I came in here different. That's all I have to say. But before I even started school and I got wind of, or in situations where I can observe adults, and other kids also, I couldn't figure out what this place was about because everyone behaved so illogically.
Right.
You're a kid, you're standing there on the street, some other little strange kid comes up, you go, hello, and the kid punches you. And I'm like, what the hell is this shit? And just from that point on, I've been an observer all my life. It's like I plopped in here just observing everything. And I watch how adults behave. I watch how arguments just escalated from some nonsense. And I'm a kid saying, it'd be easier if so-and-so just said, I apologize for that if you misunderstood me, instead of, I didn't do what you said, all this kind of nonsense, and get into some really energy huffing behavior. So people have asked me, numerous times, so what's our purpose? What's, the purpose of the human on this planet? I say, it's just food, man. This is an anomaly. This is just this one small room in the universe. If you really check out how they teach you in school, they'll act like the universe is out there. How can it be out there when you're in it?
Right.
So that was illogical when I was checking that out when I was in school. Or, man against nature and all this other kind of business. And they're like, I think Catholic schools that teach that pretty intensely, because I've known my share of Catholics and kids who were going to Catholic school where one teacher told them that the planet didn't need trees. You get all the oxygen you want from seaweed in the ocean. And the kid is proudly, talking, that's what my teacher said, and by golly, that's what, and I'm like, why would you want to cut down all the trees first? But that's part of the training. That's what religion is, that's what schools are. Teach you to just take in stuff and not really challenge it. And if you challenge it, you have to challenge it within a certain parameters. So you can't take something like math and then English and then history and then mix them all together and ask a question in their mind. But that's how my mind works.
Right.
What does this have to do with that? What does that have to do with that? Well, that's not what we're talking about. Well, how the hell am I going to get an answer if I'm going to understand anything, man? You can't tell me how these things, connect. Why do I need to know trigonometry? I'm not going into a field where I need it.
Right.
And when I did get out of school, I wasn't a good student. C minus average for me. But when I got out of school, went to college and stuff, I was able to learn what the hell I wanted to learn. And I did really well there, but didn't do very well when I was in high school. Because you weren't allowed to ask questions outside of the box. So religion is the same thing to me. It's just part of a mass distraction.
Right.
Can I ask a question? When
Yes,
y'all are
yes.
done?
Who were you talking about?
I am Stefan. How y'all doing?
Hi, how are you?
Hey,
Hi. I just wanted to know. I appreciate everyone for their input and questions. Definitely want to be respectful to everyone else. Is there room for people who have different beliefs in this type of setting? Because the introduction with just we all know that Jesus Christ isn't real, Christianity isn't real. I was sitting here with my mother, who is Christian. I do not identify as Christian, but Chief, you do know that she is the person who is receiving healing from you, and I definitely wanted to know because I know that it kind of turned her off a bit. That's why I left out of the room with her, but I just wanted to know if there is room for people who are still practicing Christians and believers of Christianity, because I don't want her to
That's a good
be.
question.
No, that's a good question. And to tell you the truth, if a person wants to, if that's where their comfort zone is, it's not for me to take it from. But,
Correct.
in other words, how I work for something broader than that.
Right.
So individuals talk about getting energy from God and so on and so forth. If you understand who handed that to you and question it in your own mind, you won't be you won't be really offended if someone has another belief. I've been around a lot of different people with a lot of different beliefs. A number of them swear by them. I just listen to what they have to say. And I don't tell them not to be a Christian, not to be a Muslim,
Right.
not to be a Buddhist. But if you want to understand what I do, you have to open your mind.
No, absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's I appreciated and still appreciate your response to the question.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I don't necessarily ascribe to any particular religion. I'm just a spiritual person, and I believe in spirit, and I don't call it by any specific name because, like we see in this room, there are people who have different beliefs. So before I call out anyone's religion as not real or inauthentic or something like that, I just want to make sure that there is room and that there won't be like bashing taking
No,
place
I'm
because
not
that's
allowing a hostile environment
okay.
about anything, about a person's religion, lifestyle, or sexual preferences, or any of that stuff.
Okay.
Everybody's welcome to be in this forum, and if anything seems like it's going to get out of hand, I will stop it.
Gotcha.
Because I want everyone to have respect for where everyone is.
Gotcha.
So your mom is where she is for a reason. Just as my grandmother was where she was for a reason. I walk in, I'm not a Christian in her house. We got along just fine.
Absolutely.
If any religion came up, it was her, and she was the one who was most critical about it.
Right.
I was afraid to piss her off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so, and I have a number, like I say, Christian relatives who know that I'm not Christian, but I don't beat them up about it unless they start to proselytize.
gotcha.
And they know better than that. So the only time I will do anything, I'll just basically ask a series of questions, of logical questions, if someone starts to proselytize me.
Right.
So connecting these dots and so on and so forth. Zohar's book of the Bible, which tells you that there's well over 11 different versions of the Bible that's been printed that they have track of.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things having to do with what people want to believe because of their comfort in it. Again, sometimes it has to do with just a family concept of tradition, to be a Christian or a Buddhist or a Jew or whatever, But
Right.
yet, I'm not interested in getting any arguments. That's why I said that question from the start. It's like, whoa, it's like driving a Mack truck right, into the forum. So, we never really get questions, on the forum about religion, but it's a challenge, and I think we're meeting it.
Gotcha.
But as far as I don't like when someone has done things where I've had Christians where I'm doing massive, major work, sweating it out, and I get a healing going on, and then someone said, "Thank you, Jesus."
I wanted to give a little bit more background to my question as well. Last year, I was at the Walmart shopping center, and this woman and her daughter came to me, and they just started speaking to me, and they knew this woman knew things about me, and she said she saw me and she picked up my energy, and they had this revelation, and then she proceeded to tell me how she was coming to me because Jesus had sent her to speak to me. I told Nelly about this a while ago. Nelly, I don't think you
No.
spoke to me about this, and she was telling me that she's been given this mission to find these chosen people from Jesus, and I am one of those people. But what startled me was that she knew some things about me that were, I mean, she's a stranger, but she knew these things. And then after speaking to Nelly, I distanced myself from that situation. But then this friend of mine who spoke about this throne room, she's invited me into prayer with her because she wants me to experience it. And then thirdly, there's a girl who I'm considering going into a business partnership with, and she's very much, about, she's very evangelical almost, and very much about Jesus, and she's mentioned it many times, and she wants to speak to me about it. I don't know why, but to sum this up, I don't know why this Jesus message essence keeps coming to me, and I'm really questioning what is going on. What is the system, what is trying to find me, and what is happening? Why are these three different parties who are so very much into Jesus trying to get to me or get to speak to me? And do I even now do business with this girl? I don't know, I just have a funny feeling, and that's where the question came from. Stefan, to your point, just not because I felt like people who believed in Jesus weren't supposed to be in the group. It's just that for me, as someone who doesn't believe in that, why is this coming at me so much lately? What is going on?
Well, a lot of times it has to do with how a person vibrates. For a lot of you, since you're beginners, there's a lot. To tell you the truth, it's always good to read my book, and that's why I tell people about the book, so that I don't have to, start from square one to get to answer the question that you're asking. But I'm just going to jump right in it, and if you can follow it, good. Those who are from the, from Asia and Neo Shamanic will know what I'm talking about. Okay, so as those who saw the movie The Matrix, there's a number of things that were actually very, very true that was going on in that. There's a bunch of other stuff that's, kind of just like fluff and, and just to keep the audience interested on a certain level. This realm has been controlled by something other than what we consider, they talk about the richest families and so on and so forth. And the reason I know this stuff is because I have been constantly attacked by this stuff ever since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I know that some of you who experience sleep paralysis and so on, and things like that. Things walking into the room, things speaking into into your ear. Depending on how you vibrate, if you have an older vibration, density wants that energy.
Okay.
When you're a younger vibration, you're not so energetic as someone that's an older vibration. Okay, so it's different between being an old soul and a young soul. When I say an older vibration, I'm talking about an older consciousness. That means when this universe came into being, I'd say the supreme consciousness came into being and gave birth to everything. Some people want to use the term God, but I don't like to use it because there's been too many depictions from too many cultures showing God as some guy, some white bearded guy, some will say like God's a black woman, or God is some Asian dude, or so on and so forth. When supreme consciousness is just pure consciousness, energetic consciousness. The universe is massive, massive. They don't know where it ends. They're still trying to look through their little telescopes and try to figure out where it ends. And then they'll say something like, "Oh, is this the only place that has life? Here." Theological questions. So theologic, when you're dealing with people who are proselytizing hard and trying to push you, they're coming after your vibration.
Okay.
Everyone sitting there, except those who've had numerous sessions with me, are sitting with attachments, which means these are the consciousness that sit around and interfere most times with your trajectory. So whatever your plans are and so on and so forth, those who have experienced making plans, feeling like it's going really, really good, and then bam, hit a wall. And then what happens? Your whole emotional state goes down. You feel, and when your emotional state goes down, you're actually puffing out a certain type of essence. So one of the things when I was in school, in college, there was a big thing that was like in the 70s. A lot of new, we call it born-agains, were running around and proselytizing like nobody's business. Every day someone would just come and walk into the classroom and spot me, and I'm in the middle of class, and start wanting to proselytize me and get me to go to the church. So with that and what I was experiencing on the other side when I would go to bed at night, a certain number of you have had wake up maybe between 3 and 5 in the morning. A number of people have been experiencing that, but this is something that goes on all the time. Usually when I would get waken up, going to the sleep paralysis, which is around that time, and they call it the witching hour.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about any of these things, you talk about religion, I talk about, I can't not, because it's like they put a wall, a box around it. We're talking about religion. I talk about everything and how it's connected. Does it make sense with everything else that I'm experiencing? Does the concept of this being the only place in the universe with life, does that make any kind of sense? But a system that runs on media and so on and so forth will just throw it out to you. They should throw it out a lot more, back, I say, in the 70s and 80s or whatever, where it's just the only planet that has life and so on and so forth. Is there other life? Is there such things as UFOs and, so on? And literally like making fun of it. When my family, we lived out in rural Michigan, and there are times we look up in the sky and there's some weird stuff going on up there. And there's lights moving around in certain ways. It wasn't like freaking, lightning bugs going crazy. Something with a direction, moving this way, then also moving that way, and then could it possibly be that maybe somebody's trying to get your attention up there?
Mm.
I don't know how many people looked in the skies in the last year. I remember the Corona thing showed up, at the end of the year before last, and then they started telling people don't go outside and stuff. And my family, we're pretty stubborn. I have family members who live in Nevada, out in the desert. A lot of sky. I told them, here's the information I'm getting. Go out, and look in the sky.
Mm.
And they looked in the sky, and there was stuff up there moving around. Lights up there moving around in odd ways. Over the year, they got to the point where you look into the sky, and it was covered. They said, wow, look like twinkling stars, except there's a number were moving in certain directions. Weirdness, I don't know if anybody have experienced the weirdness last year where the moon would rise in this area one night, and then the next night it's over here. I mean, I'm 66 years old, and I've paid attention to the moon for a long time. I'm not a lunatic or anything, but that was kind of weird. All of a sudden my attention is like, why is the moonlight shining into the window tonight at this time when it wasn't shining into the window last night at this time?
Mm.
There's a lot of stuff that's going on that's really questioning the reality of what we've been taught. And if you think about it, a certain culture, raced across the planet and introduced their concepts of what everything is. It introduced to you what school is, what learning is. Older cultures, everybody learned in the same proximity. Not in a little schoolhouse either. But also, adults were always involved in what's going on, and adults who actually cared about you. So when I was in school, I didn't think any of these folks, somebody might take a liking to you, one of the teachers, But as far as like the majority, I never felt like I was in a nurturing environment. And some of the kids that come in there, man, dense entities, they come in all shapes and sizes. People who are really awful people as adults were generally little kids who are awful little kids as well. But with that, I wanted to lead into something else, though. If you want to expand on it, we can go a little bit further into it. I know when I start to talk sometimes, again, my thing's radio. I just grab from wherever, and if that piece goes here and that piece goes there, you'll find that, I'll take you on an interesting ride with what I have experienced. So what I believe and what I do is based on experience and based on logic in my mind, how things fit logically. If you got two different pieces come from different places and you're trying to do one thing and those pieces don't fit together, there's some reason for that. But again, see?
You talked about changes in the sky and things. There's also the horoscope.
Oh, right. Yeah, we tag on that. Okay. Excuse me, how many of you are in, not that you follow the horoscope, how many of you, have experience with reading your horoscope? You can say I or they or whatever.
I.
Right? Yeah. I don't know if any of you have seen, what's the title of the
it's talks about new star sign dates.
Yeah, have you heard about that new star sign dates?
Yeah, it's been out for a while, right?
Yeah, I think a couple years now.
Yeah.
That the zodiac was off or
Yeah,
something like that?
So I think I'm Scorpio, but I think it changes me to a Libra or something.
Right. And then they added a sign also.
Yeah, for your month.
Yeah, for my month. So, I used to be a Sagittarius,
Now you're defined as a healer sign, as someone who seeks enlightenment and higher education.
But what's the name of the sign, though?
It's called Pisces. It's
the Pisces sign, something like that?
It's also considered an authority figure, someone in a position of power.
Yeah, well, I wasn't really for the definition.
Oh, sorry.
Because I don't follow it, And then this is not like, any of the stuff is not legitimate or to some degree. It depends on who wants to give you some information as to whether you're going to look at a horoscope and then all of a sudden that day something really happens. There's a lot of reasons why that happens.
Sorry,
Oh,
that's
go ahead, go ahead,
wonderful.
go ahead.
You were talking about things changing in the sky and the lights moving around, the moon moving around. Well, there's a report on this website about NASA's report from 2016 that the axis of the planet has
Shifted or something, yeah.
And apparently it spins a faster now.
Say again?
I didn't hear that.
I heard that they say the Earth spins a second faster now.
Oh, its sync is fast?
Second.
It spins a second faster.
Oh, that the Earth is spinning faster.
Interesting. You want a muscle test, Chief?
Well, I mean, how come the clocks are keeping up with it then?
Don't know.
So, what? Oh, well, you want to know if it's spinning fast? I guess, well, some like the forum or the muscle testing. Where are you at?
Right here.
Okay.
Oh, so no, sorry, no, it wasn't a question. I was saying with them speaking all this stuff, changing the horoscope, the strange things in the sky. Now they say that the planet spins a second faster. So, they're introducing a lot of new things.
Well, what I'm getting planets not spinning faster, because like I said, if you got mechanized clocks and things, how come, they're not more off than they are?
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's leap years, because they don't have it all the way. Anyway, there's that as I got when I was muscle testing was a yes or no answer, and I got no, that it's not spinning faster. What was the thing that happened not that long ago? I don't know if it was last month or more with the planets. Which planets was it? Neptune and Jupiter aligning or something like that?
Oh,
Saturn.
Saturn.
Saturn, yeah, aligning, and one of the reports said it was just some kind of a fluke or something. And I've never heard astronomers call any event a fluke. If anything, they usually start broadcasting it earlier in the year that there's going to be an alignment. In the 60s, the alignment of all these planets, at the beginning of the age of Aquarius and all of that. This was something that just happened and they noticed it, and then all of a sudden, how did they miss it?
It's like if they didn't predict it, they don't want to promote it.
Well, yeah, but the fact that they use something like, oh, is this a fluke or what do you call it, coincidence or some kind of weird thing. And again, when you come to a system where they're just, plant their feet and they tell you this is what is and this is what is and so on and so forth. And if you want to know anything about the outer realms, our scientists are on it and so on and so forth. But it seems like somebody dropped the ball, somebody, something's happening that they can't figure out.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think there's anything else, that I want to say. But again, hopefully, starting out with the religious subject doesn't really, grade too many people the wrong way. Everyone's entitled to, to practice what they want to practice, believe what they want to believe. But the only thing I would say with individuals who come in and I'm doing the work, don't minimize me by giving it to some being that you've never met before. And when I say, and I have said to individuals who come in with a certain beliefs, and they said, is Jesus working through that? Jesus is not here. Is some God working? No, it's me. My ability to channel energy from where I know I'm channeling energy, and my source is supreme consciousness.
Mm.
Means the beginning of everything. Doesn't have any walls, doesn't talk about separate religions, doesn't talk about what gender is better than other genders, doesn't talk about genetics. It's about consciousness, which is what you were before you became this.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious energy. Those of you who might have had out-of-body experiences, I don't know if anyone has, sleep paralysis is kind of like that. Sometimes you go out of your body, and when you're trying to come back in, you get something that locks you and sticks you because they want to feed on that energy and feed on your fear. I've had numerous out-of-bodies, and up until, I should say, into the mid-90s. When I got a handle on it, because there was something always involved with pulling me out of my body. And generally, to scare the crap out of me. But once I started to learn and taught myself how to fight with this stuff, then come in, start yanking on you, I would pop out myself and take care of business. Now, there's a guy, I don't want to really promote him that much, but there's 2 books, he wrote 3 books, there's 2 books that are really very interesting about astral travel or the out-of-body experience. And the first one is Journeys Out of the Body by a guy named Robert Monroe. And then he did another one called Far Journeys. And I happened to meet this man back in the 90s and went to his retreat where he was talking about it. And his thing was a little, what I would say, Palladian-esque. So when things are very, very much like the system, connected to the government in a certain way, it's like, I just call it very Palladian because it's very like rigid. So we had like these tapes that played a certain rhythm into your ear or into your mind, and a number of people who were in the retreat would have an out-of-body. Never had it before. I was there, I'm playing this thing, I'm having out-of-bodies all the time, I didn't have one there.
Mm.
Because what he was connected to was the system.
Mm.
And some years later, about 10 years later, because I introduced him to a friend of mine who had a radio show in New York on WBAI, and she interviewed him a couple times, and then finally he got pushed to the side. He was getting old anyway. He got pushed to the side, and later found out that the government had taken over his facility. Now, if it wasn't something that was real, the government wouldn't be interested. So what I found is that I was supposed to be off of that grid. Therefore, I did not have the kind of experience, out-of-body experience that I would normally have when I'm, in my apartment in Brooklyn. And for me, Ms. A calls me the puzzle master at times, and that's because I take pieces of things that are interesting to me and put them together. But sometimes it takes like 30 years for another piece to come in and come into, into place. So everything that I know and that I talk about, I know strongly is real. It's not like it's a belief system to me. It's reality. I live it. So I feel like I'm kind of moving off the subject right now, but we can just pull me back in.
Okay, so we could either segue into consciousness in different genetics in the movie that we were thinking about reviewing.
Oh, right. Yeah, also about, actually I think that's a good one though. We were thinking if we have time reviewing a movie, people tend to like that because my take on them tends to kind of surprise people because I'm looking at it from a Neo Shamanic point of view. I'm looking at movies as tools of control and conditioning and programming. So all media that you see is programming you in some way. But one of the things, the movie was that we were going to review, and not going to do it right now, but it has to do with the subject of consciousness. And consciousness swapping out into different genetics. And Jumanji 2, and Jumanji 1 was about that. These kids, different races or whatever, well, primarily it's like, what was it, 3 white kids and a black kid or something like that? Yeah, and then, I know some of you probably seen the movie, and then there's Rock and Kevin Hart and Jack Black and a couple one other woman or two women. two other women, and when they go into the game, they end up in a girl in a guy's body. White guy ends up being, The Rock. Black kid ends up being Kevin Hart. But in other words, to me, it really describes a little bit of what I talk about when people talk about race or genetics, and individuals want to get immersed into who they are as a race, because that's the program and that's how a system wants things to be, because this is very divisive. So what happens with, and what I've found over the number of years dealing with a lot of clients, I end up, and I don't always start looking for past lives. If what I call past expressions show up, they just kind of pop up. And 10 times out of 10, it relates to something that's affecting the person in this lifetime. So I have a young Black woman on my table. She's suffering from an over-swollen leg. And the doctors can't figure out why her legs are swelled to the point where it's almost like splitting, skin splitting. And she ends up in the hospital, and they're test. I don't know how many years since the young woman was running around with that affliction. A number of years, maybe 5 years or something. So she comes to Chiang Mai, because and it's kind of funny, as of 3 years ago, I didn't know there was a healing community in Chiang Mai. And just to warn you, most of them are fakes. So anyway, she came looking and so on and so forth. She ran into one of the fakes. One of the fakes sent her to me. So I'm working, and I'm trying to get this pain out of her leg, which is effectively happening. Then I pick up a lifetime. So this woman had a lifetime as a Chinese man, and have been, inducted into the military because the war was going on, and was wounded on the battlefield through something going through his leg, like a spear or something like that going through his leg. And the stories will unfold. Some of you have experienced it in your sessions. Stories will unfold. And as it unfolded, she's dying on the battlefield, and there's a lot of individuals, women who have been men who have been women, different races, popping in and out. Sometimes certain individuals from a certain culture doesn't seem to behave like what that culture considers to be normal for that culture, because that person's consciousness had a different experience and a different genetic experience. So anyway, this woman, she's dying on this battlefield. And if you read the history of like a lot of wars, they used to try to glorify it when I was a kid. You get shot, oh, you got me dead. A lot of these folks were dying over days on these battlefields. And she was one of those individuals, and she got gangrene, leg got infected, and all these other areas were affected on her body. When I located that, I pulled out the memory of it. And with the memory was a lot of attachments. So attachments will sit on something where it has to do with discomfort and pain. And Stefan, that's part of what's going on also in the case that we're talking about a little earlier, that there are attachments. There are things that could definitely be from some other, expression. And, when one of the things, even just talking about, and, going to go back a little bit to some concepts that religion has, that has all these walls. So if you're in a religion that doesn't believe in past lives, your mind tries to shut that out. Regardless as to whether your body, your vehicle is screaming to you, there's some stuff that's going on. Your body, the body is literally has been turned into a separate consciousness that you should definitely make friends with. So your body's telling you something, but the system doesn't have answers. When it's legs swelling up, other afflictions that others have had, they go to the doctors. Let's do more tests. Some will just say, we don't know what's going on. Some will say, I don't believe what you're saying is going on in your body because I can't see it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And they'll tell you that you're imagining things. Some go to the extent of telling you that you're imagining things, like your mind is so feeble that you don't know what's going on in your own body. So just, like I said, I tend to meander a bit.
That was amazing. Thank you.
So what I'm going to say, yeah, well, definitely with religion, if it's something that's blocking out possibilities, it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you can be religious and have an open mind, better for you. But once you open your mind, you might start to question, and a lot of people are afraid to question something that they believe in for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to ministers who said that they stopped believing in Christianity like years ago, but they didn't know what else to do. So they just stayed in it. So anyway, we're going to move on to.
So, do we ask a question or we continue with the interview?
No, we can ask a question.
Okay. Does anyone have a question?
Anything to add to that, or just you start a totally different subject?
Okay, yeah, I have one that's on a different subject. Oh, it's Eric. I had a question about meditation. I was looking at some of the AskTheChief videos, and I seen in one of them you spoke about meditation, and you said that some of the ways, I don't remember word for word, but you're saying something along the lines of that some of the ways that they teach meditation is kind of new age, so you don't really meditate, or you don't really see a reason for it. Which I thought was really interesting because I thought you were somebody that meditated a lot, and like that's how you got connected spiritually. So I was just wondering about that.
Actually, go ahead. If you're not finished, go ahead.
Oh no, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question because actually, when it comes to the whole program of meditation, and when I talk about these things, and I just say, look, I've given it a lot of thought. I've actually tried all these things. I was, immersed myself in the New Age thing because I was in that, in the midst of that search. And I found that the whole sitting and opening yourself up, and with my experience, you sit and you open yourself up, you don't know what's coming in.
Right.
Or someone said, well, someone walked in my room and they told me something, and I said, do you know if that individual, was dense or light?
Mm.
So density runs rampant all over the place. There are individuals who, and I'm going to get back to actually, when I talk about meditation, I do a form of meditation, but mine has to do with me focusing on something while my mind is going. Also, I know how to protect myself. I've taught myself how to protect myself from all that stuff decades ago. So we were talking to someone, it probably was a client though, in the private session, about when I meditate. My meditation usually is around me cooking, preparing something, and usually the energy comes out in whatever I'm cooking, or I do this ginger brew for those who are local. They've had it, and whatever the energy is, I put my focus in it, and my focus is always about something that's about, just clear, just, I'm getting rid of any stressful thoughts or things like that. I'm in a very clear place, and the food that I cook tends to reflect that, as well as when I make these particular brews out of ginger, reflects that. And to the point where some people become, I wouldn't say addicted.
Well, they asked, whenever I was sending samples and things, people would ask me, is there alcohol in here? There has to be alcohol. I'm like, no, there's just coconut sugar juice.
Yeah, and ginger, and a lot of ginger. So, there are people who drink it, and then they go, ooh, and they'll literally ask.
I feel it in my toes.
Yeah, but it's because I'm focusing my energy, and I have a lot of energy. a lot of energy. So if I'm focusing my energy on something, that whatever you're going to eat from mine will affect you, but never in a negative way. I had a client who was suffering from the attachment they call AIDS, and he was, I think, well, he was like a skeleton when he came in. I mean, literally, you could have used him in a science class. I've never seen or even touched anyone that bony ever. And he had maybe, I don't know, maybe about a month or something to supposedly to live. And his friends were just telling him, just go to the hospital. You know, we don't want to hear your worries anymore. Go to the hospital and let the doctors just take care of you to your bed. And he's feisty enough to want to try something else. And someone brought him to me. And he, he's still running around now. That was about, what, 2.5 years ago or something like that. Yeah. So, I saw the AIDS as a attachment. So when people talk, I'm kind of branching off to something else right now for a minute. So any illnesses or anything like that, I consider it as attachment of conscious energy. Now, conscious energy can leave blockages in forms of static energy. But what's responsible for that static energy, when you go to Reiki people, they're clearing your energy passages and things of that sort. They're thinking all they're clearing is static energy, but in reality, they're trying to pull out an attachment, something that has a consciousness. So if you're not pulling it out and delivering it somewhere with intent, where it will never come back again, but so far I'm the only one I know who's able to actually create that type of void and get rid of things. And I've talked to a number of individuals who are supposed to be professional healers and so on. What were you going to say? Yeah, the vortex and no return. Those of you who I've taught how to do containment, and Neo Shamanic has taught individuals how to do containment. When you get whatever that density that's in your body out, I'm throwing it to the vortex and no return. So if I'm pulling, if there's a lot of pain in areas, it means there's a lot of attachments in there, a lot of things moving around. And the problem in this realm is that this is a chicken coop. They don't want the chickens to get out of the chicken coop. They won't want you to figure out that everything that you've learned here is a ruse. So, that's why when someone talks about religion, I lump it with, the school system, businesses and politics and all this stuff. Everything here is designed to keep you in the chicken coop.
We talked about how attachments and blockages can totally mess up meditation. That's like
right. So we're getting back to meditation. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for pulling me all the way back where I'm supposed to be. When it comes to the meditation, again, I consider doing containment more effective than sitting for I don't know how long meditating, and according to the books and the New Age version of something that's really, really old. And also, just because it's really, really old doesn't mean that it's not a dense thing also.
Right.
Usually when you find the mainstream promoting certain people, certain cultures all of a sudden, there's a fear they're promoting gurus in the 60s, and probably it was after the Beatles or somebody went to India or whatever. On the West was like, gurus is the way to enlightenment. And if you follow any of those guys' lives after that, it didn't seem like they were very enlightened.
Right.
There also is like another system which literally you're in a small chicken coop. You go to this guy because you're curious, and they say, we got to do something about these people who are really curious. That's big. Build a bigger chicken coop around the little chicken coop. And then you go to the spiritualist, and you say, wow, man, I didn't know there was so much turf out there. And then you keep walking and walking, next thing, you hit another fence. And that's what these types of people, these, gurus and, others are slipping my mind. Yeah, and shamans. If you were watching any of the older, earlier AsktheChief, I think we did a muscle test on how many real shamans are in the world. And we got none. And I'm not a shaman. I'm Neo Shaman. And I gave you that name because I hadn't given it a name for years. I knew I could do this stuff. I interacted with these things on the other side. I got into battles. I got to the point where it didn't scare me to just jump into those zones or even be pulled. In the beginning, they were still pulling me into these dense zones. And I realized I can manifest faster when they pulled me out of my body than when I was in my body at that time. So things were coming in, you know, some people have these experiences, what they call shadow people, things that bumped in the night. Again, we go back to a movie a little bit, Monsters, Inc. Oh, it's a kid's movie. Yeah, sure. Because the things that they were collecting called screams, if the things they were collecting was essence. So when you were panicked, it's like suck all that up and they're on their way. Some people have longer torments. I was married to a woman who had night terrors every freaking night. There's nothing like someone waking you up screaming like a banshee in the middle of the night. To the point where, you know, just like as soon as I heard him, you know, wake up. So she was being tormented. Many people were being tormented by these things. So certain avenues will call them demons or call them something else, or mainstream will say you're just imagining things. That's not the real thing. You know? When you know, it's me, you know, sweating bullets and, you know, waking up with my heart beating out of my chest like that. But again, with, you know, with meditation, I think I pretty much.
Well, last thing would be, how do attachments segue meditation off into?
Well, that's where we're saying that if you do meditate, which again, it's up to you if you want to sit and quietly, whatever. You got to protect yourself. Contain first. You know, contain your space. In other words, you're blocking out anything that can actually interfere with your journey. You're blocking, you know, you're protecting yourself. So if, let's say you do find yourself moving out into the outer realms, you know that you're protected.
Right.
So the deal is with here, I have an in-law who was heavily into meditation. He was in some Eastern religion, so on, I mean, as well. And this guy was kind of goofy dude, you know, not that swift. But he was into all this stuff, and he was looking for his enlightenment. And we were talking, you know, one day, and he told me that, you know, he actually had a little meditation room in his house he lived in, and he had a dot on the wall or something for his focal point. And he was talking about, he was sitting in there and he was meditating, and then all of a sudden he had an out-of-body experience. And he's like, you know, I reached a certain level, a certain height, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, we're having a conversation, but he still sounds like the same goofy guy. He didn't really know anything before.
Right.
He had an out of body, but he didn't know what to do with it. There was literally, you know,
the same thing applies for empathing.
Oh, right.
About it, the dangers of it, because meditation is opening yourself up, so it's.
Well, that's true. What would I do without you? Anyway, yeah, meditation, you know, again, when someone's meditating, I think I did, you know, touch on it a bit, you are opening yourself up. And also, I don't know if any of you have had, read any of these things, people talking about opening your heart chakra, you know, that.
Yeah.
And that's where things, it's like you're opening your doors to, like, you know, like Grand Central Station, to anything to walk in there. So when I talk about containment, again, it's about protecting everything. Last thing you should be doing is opening your heart chakra. It doesn't mean that you're going to get clogged up. You're just going to protect it so that things can't get in easily. So we have some weird stuff that happens to us because of this work that we do. So for instance, you know the story a couple weeks ago about the kitten that shows up. Now, you know, you might think this is some weird stuff, but if you have some of the experiences that a number of my clients have, you won't think it's really weird. That density gets in and out of things. There's a saying from a lot of old folks who were talking about the devil got in it. Now, where does that come from? You know, they said, well, that's just a funny saying, the devil got in. No, I mean, that person was okay a minute ago, and next thing, they're acting like somebody else. A very destructive person. So when we're talking about protecting yourself and things opening yourself up, you can open yourself up by drinking too much. There's a number of clients in the past who would get blackout drunk and then wouldn't know how they got one place to the other. One guy, he decided to stop drinking after he was getting blackout drunk. It was a guy from Germany who, this isn't the one you think, this is a younger guy. And he and his friends would just go out and they just get ripped every weekend. And he said constantly he would end up, blackout drunk until one weekend he wakes up in the hospital and he's damn near severed his hand off. And he was told he was never going to be able to use his hand again. And he didn't know how it happened. I asked him, I said, do you know how it happened? He said, I have no idea. All I know is just,
I've had that happen.
He was able to use his hands. But someone had a question?
I was just saying that I've had the blackout situation where I didn't remember anything that transpired but did. I've had that sadly like 2 or 3 times, but it's interesting that you're bringing it up now.
Yeah,
to me,
when you blackout drunk, and I talk about attachments. Another reason I'm very familiar with this realm. One of my younger sisters grew up tormented by this stuff to the point where she would come and say, don't think I'm crazy, but I'm seeing a person standing behind you. And now they're laughing at me because they know you can't see them. Or, when you're sitting there, you might want to do some clearing before you sit in that spot because there's someone already sitting there. So with that said, there's things on the other side. And she said, look, you have no idea. There's things everywhere. So when I learned to clear, guess what? They're not everywhere anymore. The only individuals that are there from the other side are those that I invite in. And I know them. I know their vibration. So what happens when you go into places, bars and so on and so forth, it's a feeding ground. Sometimes you're carrying an attachment that's just waiting for you to get blackout drunk so they can take over the steering wheel. And that's what happens when a person blacks out. When they get drunk, blackout drunk, someone takes over the steering wheel. It almost reminds me of that movie Get Out, where the guy drinks that tea or whatever. The next thing you know, he's in some little place somewhere, in the dark, and they've got control of his body. This is real. When you get blackout drunk, something else takes over. That's why you don't remember anything. Something else is driving the car. Literally, it's like, I used to call it joyriding when I was, some years ago. Because generally, a number of people, especially guys and women, would end up in predicaments they wouldn't normally end up in if they were sober. So when I talk about clearing oneself, and when I start pulling attachments off of people, I'm pulling off those dominant attachments, the things that are right there and prominent and messing with you. Even when it comes to something where you may feel like, there are people talk about having bad luck. It has to do with something interfering on the other side. So when I first moved to Thailand and I was working on a lot of local people and so on, there are a lot of really interesting things that go on here. These guys are closer to the holistical than the West is in a lot of ways. Because it wasn't this thing that was separated like in America. When America was overrun by the Europeans, they wiped out a lot of things having to do with the nation's people's culture and their awareness of things on the other side. They didn't totally wipe it out, but they definitely did some major damage to it. Then after a while, they start to build up through this New Age movement. There's some other movements that started in Europe. and started covering it with their concept of spirituality and mysticism. So if you come from an indigenous culture that had actually real connection to this stuff, and you were separated by Western invasion and colonialism and so on, all of that stuff ended up being contaminated with concepts that were never meant to be altruistic or helpful. All it was meant to do was to keep you locked in to a chicken coop to be fed upon. There's a lot of stories that I know with this stuff. So I'm not going to, meander too much into all that because we only have so much time. What's the next thing? Oh, does anyone want me to, anything to add to that, or want me to clarify anything?
No, that's pretty good. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, you're welcome.
So I think we talked about how you ended up empathic.
All right. Yeah, with empathing, but I didn't really, get into empathing.
Also a way to get possessed.
Yeah, if you don't know how to empath properly, it is a gateway to possession. And what is called by some, I think maybe even in the church, they call it sin eating. So if you're empathing somebody, you have like a subject and you're doing Reiki, but you have this ability to sense and feel the emotions of the person, and you don't protect yourself before you start touching that person and have an idea of what's going on. Because when you're touching a person, even if any of your Reiki practitioners understand, when you're touching a client, you're touching their attachment. It's not just static energy. It's something that thinks, and at times I've seen people being made fools of by these things. So they move to one area, use your clear, and so on and so forth, and they just move around. There's times people are on the table, and you might see me working on this day, and I'm going from here to there, because there are times whatever's on there is trying to make its way to another, to another location. A lot of times I'll contain certain areas, like caging something to keep it from moving around. And a number of you, when I work, you feel it. And you feel me pulling things out, and I'm pulling those attachments out of your energy. But anyway, when it comes to empathing, I think that's pretty much. Well, that's true. Well, you can say that out loud.
Okay. So since Chief is the one who trained me to be an empath, when it first started, it was really intense because I did not understand what I was feeling or why. Sometimes I just feel angry randomly or sad randomly, and I was like, I didn't know how to deal with it. So Chief taught me how to contain that emotion of sadness or contain that emotion of anger, whatever I was empathing, because I wasn't sure. So without containment, you end up just collecting, because when you're empathing, you're fusing your energy with someone else's energy. Like, I would not empath if Chief wasn't there during sessions. That would be very dangerous, because you're fusing your energy with someone else's so they can dump stuff in your energy. And if your energy is more than that person, they will purposefully dump, because they want to, like, it's like seeing that prime real estate is better than the real estate we have. So they're very much.
Yeah, you're talking about, in other words, consciousness, or the attachment on that person. That if your energy is, they're like saying greener pastures. So I'm working on you, your energy's growing, and a number of clients know that once you start getting your energy growing, certain things start to happen. And that's, again, the importance of containment to protect yourself from the things that are all of a sudden seeing you. It's like the difference between seeing a broken down diner and in a gourmet restaurant. So when your energy is getting stronger, you're that gourmet restaurant. You're in the process of becoming a really major, construct, a major restaurant to density. So, like how they behave, they'll consume until there's nothing left. The diner is probably the person who's never had a clearing, who doesn't even think about any of this thing about, and this stuff about health and, and mental state and all of that, and they get consumed. So all of a sudden they're desperate, they want to come to someone, alternative other than, a medical doctor, and the person, maybe a Reiki practitioner, or someone who doesn't know what I know, and they'll start working on that person, and they'll get hit. Most Reiki practitioners I've talked to and have worked on are chock-a-block full of attachments, and most of them they get from their clients. So to the point where they walk in, and so we talk about walking into their apartment and feel like they're walking into a crowded room, even though they don't see, with their physical eyes, don't see anything. And this is the result of them being basically a good provider to density, the things they want to feed. Because also, if they're bringing in new clients, they're just waiting to see if they can get on that new client as well. So when you feel lighter after I work on you, that means I've disposed of what's attached itself to you permanently. I don't believe in sending things to the light. That's like sitting in the club bed or something. They go hang out in the light for a bit. And they figure, I think I've been here enough. They'll come right back. Sometimes some will just find somebody else, jump on them. My deal is to get rid of them permanently. So if I get hold of them, that's the last thing they see. Where were you as far as time? You want to do the 10:26. Okay. I don't know. We can do. If anyone, well, I still, because it's AsktheChief. So anyone have any questions? Because if not, we might go into the movie thing.
Well, I guess I had one last question on the meditation topic. Sorry to come back to the.
Yeah.
I was just wondering. A lot of people say that, like for example, Neo Shamanic was teaching me like if you ever don't know what to do about something in a situation, or if you're ever confused, you want to know the answer to the situation, meditate and you can find the answer. I just wanted to know what you thought about that specific thing about meditating and finding answers for what you may need to do next. Is that a valid thing?
Well, good question, because once depending on what the answer is, if you don't recognize the answer, there's not much you can do. I
just got a visual.
Okay, you said got a visual.
You can tell me, because I don't understand it fully. I got a visual of that someone is meditating, is like sitting in the middle of a really busy New York street and calling out and asking for an answer.
Yeah, that's the problem too. Again, without protecting, having a focal, in other words, focus and an intent that I'm protecting myself from anything that's negative. And so, that's one thing that I would say is if you're going to do something like that, you add that to the bill before you. But for me, again, because there are these limiting words in as far as like what meditation is. With me, from what I recall, when I first started to really get into the way that I get information, I would find myself having to get quiet my head, which means I had to find out. Excuse me, I'm getting ready to purge. Excuse me. I had to see how much noise was going on in my head first.
Right.
And in most cases, you get to the point where you're walking around ever since you're a little kid with this going on in your head, and you just feel that's just the way the world sounds. Until start pulling, until
you start pulling and extracting.
Excuse me. I don't know, somebody's gonna cough. Whatever that is, trying to block this. Yes, go ahead.
So whenever I got the visual of sitting in a busy street and then calling out for answers, when Chief said about the noise, you have internal noise and there's also external noise as well. Noise from there's all sorts of things. When Chief says there's gas. Would you like to explain?
Well, okay, so internal noise is what goes on in the head, and once you get a clearing, enough of a clearing, all of a sudden you realize that things sound different. There's not all that buzzing, or a lot of times there'll be like random music that you heard, that you listen to, or voices going on. Sometimes it's some random stuff about some joke somebody told or some line from a movie. That's all part of the noise. Oh yeah, well, my young sister says is extremely sensitive as well. One morning she woke up. I lived up in upstate New York for a while, and so she was living with me at the time, with my family. And she woke up hearing a chant. And I'm living out in a rural area, and she's hearing this chant, USA, 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 USA. And it was during that time of that last Gulf so-called war thing that they were putting on. And it was literally what I call a corkscrew. Global, but actually wasn't really so much. It could have been global, but I knew if she was hearing it, it was going on probably all over the country. And it was literally trying to get people into this very patriotic mindset while they were while they were over there doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing.
Trying to meditate.
And just, and so, yeah, if you're meditating, and you start picking up this stuff, that's another thing about meditating. You open yourself up more, but the way that the human vehicle has been modified on this planet, literally at a lower vibration, so that it actually soaks in all this stuff. So when I'm clearing people, it's like clearing a freaking World Trade Center or something, floor by floor. That's how much stuff that's laid on people. And then when I talk about past expressions, then you got the stuff that's laid on from past expressions as well. But we should deal with what's affecting you in this time zone. And there are things that are very much in this time realm, but inevitably I'm going to find something that's kind of like a, what do you call it, when they just spill it over from a past expression, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 and so on, number of past expressions. Some people have a lot of past expressions. Yeah, well, that's one thing, because I get into this humble thing. Well, if you really have some serious questions, you do have to ask me when it comes to this realm. I mean, I've talked to monks and so on, and things who are supposed to be like, really into spirituality. We get into a conversation, and I start to see his wall. For me, it's no mistake that I was raised outside of religion, not so that I can poo-poo religion or anything, so that I don't have someone imposing a concept on me or putting me in a box. I had a number of folks, especially go to Detroit, that one of their first questions is, "What church do you belong to?" And I said, "Well, I don't really belong to a church."
Right.
And they go, like there's, like I'm the one to be wary of. Or my ex-wife, she was Buddhist. So, what church you belong to? I said, I don't belong to one, and she's a Buddhist. She's a Buddha? Wow. And it's like to the point where everything, whatever everyone else's belief is so foreign that you don't even pay attention to how it's properly, pronounced. When I paid attention to other people's religion, I paid attention to what they said their religion was about, who they were, praying to, and so on and so forth. And so giving that respect, this is where they're at. They don't know the stuff that I know. They don't have my experience. So I'm sharing my experience, and maybe it'll break them out of that box. And and it's not like this march on all Christians and you got to change. Look, if you're going to be where you're going to be, you're going to be where you're going to be.
Right.
You know, I'm just here for those who want to know, where I come from when I'm doing the work that I do. My work is 100% effective. I have not failed on any. And I've had people throw some stuff at me. Cancer patients, AIDS patients, and they all walked out alive and better than they were when they came in.
Do we have
So
clients who say they trust you with their life?
well, yeah, I have clients who said literally that they trust me with their lives, and I know why they say that.
Also, Chief, well, whenever we the reason why we call this forum Ask the Chief is to encourage people to ask. For me, I feel like, Chief is 66 years old. He has so much experience. He's gone the journey that I want to go as well for myself. So, like you talked about, a Sherpa guides you.
Yeah, the mountain. Yeah.
You want someone who's already had that maturity, that experience. So why would you go to someone who's obviously they're not where there's a lot of like show, a lot of like.
Well, those are the ones I call fakes. Basically straight up. This story I've told before, but none of you have heard it. When I more or less came out to the West over 3 years ago with what I do, even though I started doing it in the States, but there was, all this like blocking on the other side. So whatever I was doing, it's like when you're doing something and you feel like, man, I know I put all the pieces together and I'm doing it this way, but how come nothing's connecting? Because things on the other side don't like what you're doing. It's like that grid in the Matrix. They monitor the grid, and if your energy is peaking, all of a sudden you get attention. So over here, different zone, for whatever reason, man, I just lost my place.
Well, I can jump to where I go. Do you want me to?
No, I wanted to finish it because it was very important. At least I thought it was important. But go ahead and jump to the other thing.
Okay,
I'll pick it up later.
Also, so first clients begin when they first start. So you have the most damage that you've collected over every expression that you've had. So when you first come to Chief, that's really an essential time to ask these questions and get the answers, because questions, speaking is energy. So you're absorbing the vibration into yourself, which begins to rattle all this damage that you collected. So it's being able to gather information from Supreme Consciousness Universe, reconnecting, has to do with the more you release the damage, release the past, release what you used to know as truth. And then Chief begins to teach people how to go from linear thinking, which is how density has taught people. You get in a line and you wait in line until it's over. Get out of line and start thinking and stack thinking, and then there's radial thinking. And that's when you can get into absorbing answers from Supreme Consciousness.
Okay, well,
right.
Sorry.
Okay. I have to paddle back to see where you started. Well, when we're talking about, in other words, linear thinking means that, just like that, it's like having blinders on and thinking according to how we've been trained to think. Like, there's step 1, then there's step 2, then there's step 3, and so on and so on. So everything is lined up in a certain way. And they said, nope, this is the way you have to do it. But if you're thinking, at least stack thinking, which is how density thinks, and that's why they'll watch you and they'll set these traps for you and so on and so forth. So you're thinking that this one thing is a problem, but they're putting something else over there as well. So when it comes to thinking outside, because I try to explain radio thinking, and it's interesting because a lot of people have a block when I start describing radio thinking. Radio thinking means that I can lean things 360. When I get information, it's 360 instead of okay, first I go to this book and I go page after page after page after page. What I do, I just go through the book. There, I go into this situation where some live action's going on, or where someone said something, or something I've seen. And also, I don't shut out the other realms. Therefore, I'm able to get all this information. The reason I can do work here and you'll feel it in Los Angeles is because I've knocked down those walls. So when I'm on the other side, I can be right there in the same room with you, and that's what Ms. A does as an empath. One of the strongest empaths I've ever met, and even my experienced siblings who are psychic say the same thing. So when I tell she's tapping in, and then I just use her, that's a user, but she allows me to work
Use
on
her
people.
body.
It's true. Well, it started out with Ms. A was one of my clients.
Yeah.
And she was diligent about. She believed in what I was doing. She came from the damage of the cult. And what I was saying and what I taught my daughter just rang logical and rang really true to her. And so she wanted to, wanted to end this. But before she came in, she wasn't impacting or anything. We're working on all these blocks and all these people trying to pull her back into the cult and all this kind of stuff. And so I just started training her. And she would sit in on sessions while I'm working on sessions. And then all of a sudden I noticed she was impacting people. Because when I'm pulling, all of a sudden she was impacting uniquely. She was impacting the attachment. And those of you who've had sessions, you've experienced it. Where something, you hear her screaming, that's not her. I said, it's not her. That's the attachment that's on you or in your energy or around your energy.
Right.
Sometimes I'm grabbing something in your room. We had a client just recently while I'm working on her. He just, oh my goodness, because someone closed her bathroom door. And she's the only one in the space. And so what they're doing, they're literally trying to scare her away from you. Oh, this guy's getting into some creepy stuff, man. They wanted to scare her.
Yeah.
Bumps in the night, excuse me, designed to scare you. Again, Monsters Inc. Get that, you go like that, you puff out energy. I don't know if any of you have ever smelled energy, the energy on another person. I don't know if any of you have been around people and you smell a smell coming off somebody, and you ask someone, you smell that? And they don't smell it? You're smelling energy. In other words, you're smelling the realms that they claim don't exist. There are times if you're sitting, and I know a number of you, if you've had someone that you cared about who's transitioned on to the other side, and that happens to a number of individuals, usually, well, it could be male or female, but they're, in the space, and they may not even be thinking about that person, but all of a sudden, the smell of the perfume, or the smell of their body odor, will all of a sudden you get a whiff. And that means that person's shown up, and 9 times out of 10, they're just trying to, just watch over you, and and trying to. They're more like alarm systems, because when it comes to density, they don't have the kind of juice that these densities have that I call attachment. So what they'll do, they'll try to warn you of things. You might all of a sudden, you'll hear something, or you get a thought that I shouldn't walk down that street. I should go in this direction instead. Sometimes at the very last minute, all of a sudden, and then you find out something happened down the way where you getting ready to walk. And I've heard numerous stories. It's just one of the things being around while I'm paying attention. I like people's stories, and I've been older folks talk to me ever since I was in my teens. I just sit there. I was a good listener, so they gave me all kinds of interesting stuff. A lot of stories about things happening on the other side. A lot of people talking about soul selling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's talk about that.
So
like when people,
yeah, let's talk about it. What do you want to talk about? I mean,
well, because I've always heard that they sold their soul. Like, how does that happen? Because I want to make sure I don't sell my soul. You feel me? I don't want to sell.
Well, there's also a situation where people sell other people's soul. Now, my father was the first one that told me, because I was working with with him since I was 12 years old, and he was an independent trucker, and so he did a lot of things that involved trucking, you know. And so, you know, some of the times he just passes time. He just tell me these stories about, you know, he even felt that his father sold his soul because of his struggles, and he did have a lot of struggles. He told me a story about when he went into the military. He went in near the end of the Second World War, and he was 16 years old. And he lied about his age so he can get in, you know, so he can send money back to my grandma. But he was talking about leaving. They were in, I think they were in Mississippi at the time, the family, and going, you know, into the military. And there was this guy that was in the town who was just really just down. You know, he didn't have any shoes. He was just, the guy was just down. He goes in the military, so he comes back, and this guy is sitting on his front porch in this nice little house. Dude's got a wife. You know, he's sitting there, you know, and I don't know if the guy was sitting in a rocking chair or whatever. And he's, you know, he's clean, he's got clothes, he's got shoes, you know, and the guy sees him, you know, and, you know, they know each other, you know, and he calls him over and said, yeah, you know, I'm different from what you remember, huh? He said, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know how you changed that much, dude, but he said, let me show you something. And they had, you know, silver dollars were this common at the time. And he had, you know, like a silver dollar, and then he closes it up in his hand, and then he tells my father to open his hand up, and he drops in his hand, and he said it was red hot. He just had to drop the thing on the floor, on the ground. And so how the conversation went, without actually saying, but actually saying it, he sold his soul.
Wow.
And my father's sitting up there, he let him just like hang out. He's sitting up there, and this is like, you know, Jim Crow time, and there were like, you know, certain white businessmen who would show up at his place. And they would have an envelope. And this guy wouldn't even move from his chair, he'd just have his wife go out there and grab the envelope. And then take it into the house.
Wow.
He said this is like happening, like, you know, several times throughout the day. Even one guy came in, had a fetish or something around his neck, and he said that whatever was in that man, he said, you know better than to come with something like that. That little fetish, I'll show you something.
Uh-oh.
And he said the man, you know, literally almost peed himself and, you know, and ran off. So anyway, these are some of these stories that I know is, you know it's true. You know, I mean, one of the reasons they want people talking to older folks is because there are some links that link to something that beyond, you know, like iPhones and, you know, the latest pop song and so on and so forth. There's a bigger world out there because at that time they didn't have all this distraction. They didn't have personal computers. Shoot, they didn't have TV back when my father was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And radio. So people will sell their souls. There are individuals who come to my studio, and one in particular who was doing quite well as a healer, and he could do some stuff, but he wasn't really that good. And I'm working on him because he's falling apart. His contract was up. And so there's certain individuals who will sell their soul, they get to a certain age, and their contract's up. This guy was in his early, mid-70s. And Ms. A saw him, she said, he looks like a stitched up rag doll or something. You know, so when he had his first session, he had, frostbite in his feet or something, and some other things going on. He was just falling apart. And you might see one of the videos on the Facebook where I have snippets of people who are like, you know,
Your website too.
on my website. And this is the guy that goes, "You're amazing." That guy. He's in England, and I'm here, and he's a healer, but he never experienced anything like what I do. So I'm pulling things. Oh, I feel that. Oh man, you know, you hit all the spots, you know. And of course, the frostbite subsided. he was doing, well. He was traveling around again, and then, he calls me back, and he comes in for a session. So anyway, I start working on this guy, and I like, this dude's into a lot of dense stuff, but under the idea that he's altruistic and he's working for good and all this stuff. He wasn't the nastiest person that I've had, in my studio, but he definitely was clearly into the density. And I'm picking up, I say, you got some contracts on you, don't you? And then he goes like, I might have a few.
Uh-oh.
So there are people who actually do know that they're selling their souls.
Wow.
And if you're literally, you put it out there, certain, there's a lot of people in show business who've done that. But they'll put it out there, I'm my last, dollar or whatever, I'll do anything. I'll do anything to get out of this hole and to be successful in my field. And how they know that the contract has been accepted has to do when things like all of a sudden turn around like that. And there are a number of stories in show business of people who said all of a sudden, they're down on their luck, all of a sudden, right on this track.
Right.
Yeah. And with Miss A, she's empathing, of course, as those who know. When I'm saying things, when I'm saying something that rings true, you're
yes. That's what? Say that again, Chief.
Oh, what about when Ms. A empaths?
Yes, and you said, and she does. That's what?
That's the density that's eavesdropping.
Got you.
So they're eavesdropping through her, they eavesdrop through you as well. But the thing I utilize, they're eavesdropping to mess with them because they're not that bright, really. Anyway, what are you gonna say, Ms. Abson?
Hold on, I have like a communication system.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're talking to me, you're talking to me.
Oh, well,
Ask the Chief, it's okay. Well, because they was talking about her broadcasting system, that is what we called it, but you can go ahead and explain it.
All right, well, I didn't know if it was interesting.
No, it's interesting. I think it's interesting because what we find boring,
all right,
because it happens so much,
okay.
other people find it like really fascinating, so,
So, when it comes to, everyone has their own, past expressions and how their energy can, progress through and how they got stuck in this density. When I got stuck in this density, I had an expression where some density put something in my energy that allows me to broadcast their voices like a radio station. Like it can pick up any density on anyone and whatever they're connected to, and then verbally express it through my energy. So I do believe that those who support the chief segued me to the chief so that he could utilize this thing that density put in me for the best use. And that's why I was very thankful and grateful and honored to work, I'll be allowed to work with the chief. So when Chief talks about he can break contracts, that's something very unique, only he can do. Would you like to express?
Well, literally, once I got rid of the fear, which was maybe about, I'd say 2 decades ago, and that had to do with me just, they were just laying it on thick, and there's some of the stories in the book. What happened is I got angry, and I was asking, I said, I'm getting tired of this creepy feeling when, I'm in certain places, certain areas. I had this studio that I had built over my 3-car garage, and I'm in there working late, and and I used to do stints where I would work sometimes 48 hours working on projects for clients, and around the so-called witching hour, I start to feel it, but not just the witching hour. There was like 3 in, maybe it's witching hour on another side of the planet, but around 3 in the afternoon, I'd be in my studio working, doing the project, and then all of a sudden I was just like, and I end up like falling asleep right on my board, right at my desk. And my younger sister, she moved in and stayed with us for a good while. And after she moved in, she's calling me. This is one that sees all kinds of things. She calls me from the main house, and she says, you know, there's some things around you in your studio.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, okay. That really makes me feel real comfortable. And then she starts to describe these things, and that was, you know, it was irritating, but kind of funny after the fact. But she was like, okay, this guy came in, and he has these 3 big black things with fur and red eyes following him. And they're standing around your desk right now. And I'm like, oh, shoot, that's what I'm
gosh.
And I'm like, what next, Loretta? What next? That's it. Oh, click. So I was put on the spot to try to figure out how to get rid of these things. So, you know, I was, like I said, I was delving into the New Age thing and all that. So I get my smudge, you know, my sage. And I'm like, yeah, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And she, you know, then she calls up again. They're laughing at you. Well, no, this is supposed to work, you know. So okay, what next? What next? What's next? And so I said, well, it's energy. They're after my energy, and they've been doing this for like a good year. Like same time, bam, I'm out, and then I'm out for maybe about an hour. Then I'm like, okay, all right, you know, and then I start working again. So I said, these guys are after energy. And if it wasn't for her, you know, telling me, even though it creeped me out at first about them, I probably, you know, would have just still had that happening. So I said, they're after energy. Let me try something. So I start pulling their energy. I'm mixing up 2 stories, actually. The one was that there was some guy from South America came through with a group of people. And I thought that guy was a spirit, but he showed up in and out of body form with a group of people. The dense things, when she told me about them, she said, no, now they're looking at me all pissed off and everything. And they left. So I actually I combined 2 stories. They did leave and they never came back. Because once they were discovered, they knew, you know, that I would probably leave the space around that time, so they wouldn't have to try to follow me around. But because these things travel along ley lines, which is another topic, they only had so much space. Also, they're very territorial. Density is very, very territorial, just like humans are. You know, we train humans to be territorial, they did. So some dense entities can't cross a certain area without running into trouble with another.
That's why whenever you break contracts, they consider that person their turf.
Yeah, they consider you, if you have one that's been with you a long time, they consider you property. And there are times when I'm working and I'm pulling, and this will empathic, and then they'll say, she's mine, or he's mine. You know, and I just like, I don't care. I said, not anymore, and then I pull them out. But of course, I had to build up to that point. But the thing when I found out about pulling energy was when the ones came through from South America, and she was in the studio at the time. And they were literally trying to pull my energy as well. So I decided, that's when I was using the sage and all that. They were laughing and so on and so forth. All this stuff is supposed to protect you and everything. And so I just decided to sit. And I said, you know what? If they can pull my energy, let me see if I can pull their energy. And I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I'm pulling. I said, I wonder if it's working. And my sister said, they said, stop doing that. I said, well, you guys are stupid. I'm going to continue to do that.
Exactly.
And I pulled, and they had to leave.
And pulling someone's energy is something specific to Chief. So
Yeah.
Containment would be the best thing for all clients. Pooling would not be the best thing.
Yeah, for you, containment.
Yes.
Is the best. You contain them, and you throw them in the vortex and no return. Sometimes, if it's a person walking in with a bunch of attachments, I contain that person, and then I just leave it on them. So
Okay.
in other words, what he came in with, he's going to leave with.
Got you.
While they're in my space, they're not going to be messing with me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I contain myself, my own protection, it's your intent. That's another thing. Oh, it's all your imagination because they want to weaken you. The reality of the matter, if you practice with your intent, you can close out damn near anything.
Mm.
And if you throw something into the vortex and no return, don't worry, it's not light. If it's light, it won't go in. If it's dense, it'll go in and you'll feel that, that presence is gone. So was that the end?
That was the end, but.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of felt we might not get to the movie review, but that's okay.
May I add the last thing for the
Sure.
containment? So for everyone who's doing containment, you can visualize, so everyone has like a pipe where the energy is coming from your higher consciousness into your avatar so that you can use it. So whenever Chief begins to clear you, your pipe can get a little bit bigger so you can accept a little more energy, because too much at once can explode your physicality.
Yeah, well, I've had individuals like, take everything out. I said, you won't be able to handle me taking everything out. It's like having like all these holes in you, and the only things that's keeping you, like upright is the density in these pockets. So I have to strategically remove from certain areas so that your energy can fill up with stronger and lighter energy. Because like I said, when I get rid of stuff, it's gone. And if you're containing, other things aren't going to come in and take their place. So if I pull everything, it's like you pancake,
Flatline.
Well, you could actually flatline, because your system's going to go into a shock depending on how much stuff you have on you.
Mm.
So the pipe that the energy comes through, that's why Chief says when you do containment, don't worry whether you're containing a mall or a huge, the Olympic-sized stadium, because you're using Chief's energy. But he's also helping you to increase yours so that you can practice, using your own energy, because whenever you're not doing containment, you're allowing attachments just to seal your essence constantly. So your pipe has hardly any energy flowing through it, the very minimal amount. So as you begin to practice using the containment, Chief gives you the energy to use. Yours has the time to recuperate and to grow little by little.
So not to be crass, but if you do half-ass containment, you get half-ass results.
Hey.
And those who say amen, no. Those who say yes, they know personally how that works. So again, you're going to contain everything. Those I might not have mentioned about containing food. You contain your food.
Yes.
So if you're cooking your own food, that's okay, because that's your energy going in it and so on. But we should end it. But thank you to everyone who joined and donated to the forum. The next one's coming up next month for the West Coast. Next week for Global. AsktheChief Global. And after that, it will be the Global Women's Forum. And we probably will get into that movie on the Women's Forum. So I set in on the movie segment of the Women's Forum, which lately has been taking up the whole Women's Forum, but no one seems to be complaining about it. So anyway, everyone, have a good evening. And those
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Chief.
Chief.
I'll see y'all soon.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful time. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.